Hi guys, today we're going to talk about cardiovascular system. Um, so, what is a cardiovascular system? This is so now we're going to talk about the specific organs which is make the system, um, and this system include our heart and blood vessels. So the function of cardiovascular system is to provide the oxygen for many different type of cells and organ, and also to provide the nutritions. So in general, we can say this is as a transport, and also waste. So as we live, we produce a lot of waste, and this waste is have to be removed from our body, from our cells, through the vasculature system. Also, our blood system is cardiovascular, especially vasculature system, is responsible, or not responsible. It also include our immune system, because we have um, different types of blood cells, which is immune cells, which is going to help us to fight against infection and different types of bacteria and viruses. And that's the function is to prevent the blood loss if you have an injury. So let's talk about what make up the blood. So we can see the blood as a two portion. One portion is a solid portion of blood, and the other portion is a liquid. So the liquid portion of blood is called plasma, and plasma, this is a liquid where all the nutrients, proteins, cells, fibers, hormones, and so on are suspended or dissolved. So we can see the plasma as a substance where everything is dissolved, including different type of cells and different nutritions and so on. So what the main type of blood cells we can find in uh, in uh, in our blood? This is obviously red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and they dissolved in plasma, right? So plasma doesn't have any color. Plasma is it's a liquid, clear liquid, and it doesn't have any color. But when we have our, like when, for example, when we have a cut and we see, and you obviously can see your liquid blood, the color is making up by red cells, and we're gonna talk why those actually cells are red. Red blood cells. That's the scientific. So red blood cells is a general name. Scientific name is an erythrocyte. Erythrocyte. Erythro is from Latin is iron. So those are the most common type of cells. Their function is transport oxygen from the lungs to and distribute oxygen among the different type of tissue and cells. It also transports the carbon dioxide and waste. So when you have a cellular respiration inside the cells, they produce carbon dioxide, and this carbon dioxide have to be removed from your tissues, and this is removed by your red blood cells, and also some portion of carbon dioxide is dissolved in a plasma, and then it's removed in the lungs. So the protein which is responsible for binding oxygen is a hemoglobin protein. This is a very complex structure of a protein, and it has a special editing to the hemoglobin protein, and this iron. And the iron is actually responsible for binding the oxygen. and when the oxygen is binding to iron, it turns the iron to the oxy state, and the oxy state make oxidized iron have a particular color, and it has a color of red. The good example is going to be rust. So if you and the color of rust is kind of like orange red, orange red. So that this is where color of blood come from. So the first reason, because this is the most common type of cells, and because every erythrocyte have it's basically packed. Those cells are basically packed with a hemoglobin molecule, and every molecule have heme groups, which is include iron, and oxygen bind to iron and makes the hemoglobin looking like a reddish color. The other type is a white blood cells, so we call them leukocytes. This is and we have different type of white blood cells. This is include leukocytes, phagocytes. Those immune cells which is gonna prevent the infections. They're gonna make sure if the cut happened, and for example bacteria is gonna get inside your blood system, right? Those phagocytes is gonna actually chase those bacteria, and they gonna eat them up. So we have also beta cells, T cells, which is responsible for long-term immunity. For example, immunity to, if you right now it's very let me give you an example with the current situation. If you have if somebody had a COVID-19 virus infection, and that person got through that infection, and his immune system, beta cells and T cells, gonna produce a special proteins, and the name of those proteins are antibodies. So next time if that person is gonna interact with a virus, those antibodies gonna attack that virus, and your immune cell is going to be able now to recognize this pathogen, and it's going to destroy them. That's how. And those antibodies is made for very long term, for many years and sometimes decades. So if you're going to encounter this virus one more time, your immune system is going to be ready, and it's going to be able to identify and kill that virus. So we have different types of immunity, but it's not the purpose of our class to talk about different types of cells which is made up the immune system. So the last most common type of cells is the thrombocytes, and the thrombocytes are responsible for making the blood clots. If you make a cut, those thrombocytes gonna be activated. They're gonna release different types of fibers, and those fibers is gonna make a network or mesh, which is gonna catch the erythrocytes and make a clot. So you're not gonna lose the blood. All right. All right. If the number of platelets is going to be too low, for example, some people have a genetic disease which is have defected thrombocytes, and if those people is going to have a cut, they might even bleed to death. Or if you have too much thrombocytes in your cells, they may they may form thrombosis, which is gonna make your blood too viscous, and those clots might. So what is the clot, right? Let's explain what a clot. The clot is it's hundreds and thousands cells which is clumped together, and if that clump and if that clot is gonna clamp the, for example, small blood vessels, uh, they're gonna block the blood flow, and if that clot is gonna block the blood flow, some of the cells and some of the tissue is not gonna get oxygen, it's not gonna get nutrition, so those cells might die. And this is what happened when you have a stroke or heart attack. So what's the difference between stroke and heart attack? So the stroke, when a clot happened, and it blocked the blood flow to your neurons, and the neurons actually died. So when the group of neurons die, this is called a stroke. When you have a heart attack, this when a clot actually formed, and it blocked the blood flow to the cardiac muscle. And when the cardiac muscles starve, and they do not have enough oxygen, they don't have enough nutrition, those cells actually start to die too, and then you have a heart attack. That's a thing to talk about the red blood cells. Is that we have a different type of blood. We have different types of blood type. This is type A, type B, type A and B, and type O. So this is a cartoon example of red blood cells or erythrocytes, right? Erythrocytes. So every erythrocytes have a special proteins on the surface, and they call antigens. Right? All of them have a different shape. So they obviously doesn't look like this, and this is only a cartoon example. But the point is, type A have a very specific shape of those antigens. Type B have very specific shape and structure, and type A and B actually have both of them. And type O blood cells doesn't have any antigens on the surface. So, and we need to know this when you, for example, when one person lost some blood, and you want to donate some blood to that person, you always have to consider what type blood you have. So it's always a good idea to know your blood type. I have type B negative. So we're going to talk about that. So let me explain how this system works. So our immune system can recognize those different proteins on the surface of our cells. If you have a type A, your immune system can recognize those type A antigens, and it's not going to destroy those cells. But if you're going to put foreign blood, which is type B, to the type A, right? For example, you type A and you receive type B. So what's going to happen, because you never had a type B in your body, your immune system is going to attack those cells because it's never seen this before cells. So it's going to think those cells are actually foreign cells, and they have to be killed. And then the inflammation is going to happen, and this actually going to lead to making the clots and lead to death. Or exactly the same might happen if you a type B and you're going to receive type A blood. Immune system is going to activate it and it's going to attack those type A cells. But if you type A and B, you can actually receive type A and type B, because type A and B have both antigens, A and B. right? So the cells simultaneously have type A and B antigens. So if type A and B, type A and B receive type A and type B, it's not gonna compromise immune system. But if you're gonna, if type A is gonna receive A and B, is gonna compromise immune system because it has extra antigens, right? So what does that mean? It means type A and B can receive any blood, any type of blood. It can receive any type of blood. The same as a type O, which doesn't have antigens, right? If you're gonna receive type O blood, you're not gonna have your immune system compromised because it doesn't have antigens. So your immune system, you're not even gonna recognize those cells, right? So type A and B can receive any type of cells, any type of red blood cells, but you cannot receive type A and B because type O doesn't have antigens, so your immune system never see any antigens. So if you're gonna receive A and B, immune system is gonna attack them. The same is A and B. But if you have type O, you actually can donate to anyone because it doesn't have any antigens. So if you type O, you always can donate to the other people, but you cannot receive blood from any of those. So you type O can only receive type O blood, but they can donate to everybody. So this is a very rare type of blood. So they can donate to everybody, but they can receive only type O. So let me repeat this again. Type A can receive type A and type O because type O doesn't have antigens. Type B can receive type B and type O. Type A and B can receive all of them, but it cannot donate blood. It only can receive. So if you a donor of A and B, your blood can only be used for A and B and only A and B because it has every antigens. All right. So let's talk now. So we now talk about the cells which make up the blood. So let me talk about the cardiovascular system and cells. Right. It includes the heart and vessels by itself. So we have two circuits. This is a pulmonary circuit where actually the blood is get oxygenated, and you have systemic circuit where is actually blood goes it goes blood to heart and through your body, right? And the pulmonary circuit is from your blood to lungs and back to the heart. So this is a closed circuits. So let's talk about the different types of vessels we have. We have arteries, capillaries, and veins. All of them um, um, very all of them have very specific structure and function. So first of all, arteries carry blood away from the heart. So you should remember this. If any type of blood vessel, if any type of blood vessel is gonna leave from the heart, is gonna be artery. It's gonna have artery-like structure. If all right, so if veins gonna return the blood to the heart, right? So if any blood vessels is gonna go to the heart, is gonna be the veins, and the capillaries, it's very small blood vessels where the exchange of materials happens, and we're gonna talk about these more with great examples. All right, so let's talk about the structure of veins and arteries and capillaries. So the biggest difference between structure of arteries and veins was their um, what kind of type of tissue they have. We already talked about different types of tissue. This is a connective tissue, muscles, epithelium, and nervous tissue. So veins, and big veins and big arteries, they have all of the type of the tissues. They have a connective tissue, smooth muscles, epithelium, and nerves to innervate those blood vessels. So what's the difference between those vessels? First of all, arteries have a very thick layer of smooth muscles. So the reason why, because because pressure is made in arteries and can be controlled in arteries, and that's why you have to have this huge and thick middle layer, which is the smooth muscles, to control pressure, and sometimes to make it lower and higher. And it has on the surface it has a connective tissue, fibrosis connective tissue, which is gonna protect our blood vessel. In the veins and diameter, right? The how thick the hole in a, how big the hole in your blood vessel. So in artery is much smaller than in veins, right? And the difference between veins, it has a very small layer of smooth muscles, but it has very thick connective tissue. This is fibrosis connective tissue, and this is made up mostly from elastic fibers. So vein are very elastic type of, very elastic, so they can dilute and contract because of these, and they have high elasticity because of those connective tissue. Arterioles. So let's break up some definitions. So you have artery. So the arteries are this is the big one of the biggest blood vessels, which is carry oxygenated blood. And when they gonna so you have an artery, and when the artery is gonna divide to the smaller artery, we now call it arteriole. This is small arteries. Then this arteriole is going to be divided to the capillary bed, where the exchange happens, between nutrition, gases, with adjacent tissue to those capillary bed, and then it's going to come back from the capillary bed. It's going to come back to the venulus. This is a small veins, and then then it's going to come back and to the bigger vessels, which is called veins. All right. So we have two major blood vessels, which is aorta, which is leaf, which is aorta is an artery which is leaving the heart, and the vena cava is a big vein, the biggest vein, which is into the heart. Capillaries. So the capillaries are the smallest blood vessels, where so what's the unique structure about the capillary vessels? We already talked about that. So they extremely thin. So red cells pass through a single file. So that means they some of the capillaries so small, only one cell can travel for the vessel, and those vessels made up from the squamous simple epithelium. We already talked about this, right? And they extremely thin, right? Those cells extremely thin, and they gonna help to diffusion of nutrition, gases, and so on. So let's talk about the heart. we have um, we have four major blood vessels, which is two blood vessels which is introduce blood to the heart, and two vessels which is leave the heart. And we have also four chambers, which and they separate by the wall. We have atriums, which is which is received the blood, and we have two ventricles, which is push the blood away from the heart, and they have a septum, which is divide those two portion of a heart. And also the heart has a polarity. It has an apex. This is a where the heart is end, and it has a left side and right side. And I'm gonna try to explain how to know the difference with the left side and the right side. So also heart has a special valves which is going to prevent the blood flow. So you should think about heart as a pump, and the function of a pump is to pump the blood, and it's pumping the blood through our blood vessel. And if to make the blood flow possible, you need right direction of a blood flow. So those valves, you actually have to know the name of the valves for the squeeze and for the final. They're gonna prevent the blood flow through the from one chamber to the other chamber. So the names of those the names of those valves are atrioventricular valves, as you and those valves separate atrium between ventricles. That's where the name come from, atrioventricular valves. So they're gonna separate the atrium and ventricles. And then you have so the right atrioventricular valves is gonna the name is a tricuspid valve, so that one. And we have the left bicuspid valve, which is this one, which is gonna separate the left atrium and the left ventricle. Then you have another type of a semiluminal valves, which is gonna separate. We have pulmonary valve and aortic valve, which is gonna separate the pulmonary vein and pulmonary artery between ventricles. So let's take a look, closer look at those ventricles and those valves. So this is and these schematic pictures, we can see how the blood flow happens in a heart, and I'm gonna explain this. But first of all, let me show the different types of valves. So first of all, we need to know the function of valves is to prevent the blood flow backward to movement, right? So what does that mean? So this is suction of a heart, and we're gonna start from a picture A. So we have the biggest vein, and so the name is superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. So this vein, the biggest vein, is gonna introduce the blood from the body, right? So this vein is gonna receive all the blood, deoxygenated blood. So it means this blood doesn't have oxygen. deoxygenate blood from from the rest of the body, and it's going to introduce to the right atrium. When the blood is gonna introduce to the right atrium, is gonna go through um, um, uh, through the atrioventricular valve, and this so this valve is called uh, uh, tricuspid valve, and when the blood is gonna go, so when the blood is gonna go through that valve, is gonna be introduced to the right ventricle, so first of all, I'm gonna just explain how the blood goes, and then we explain how the different systole and diastole happens when the different chambers contract. So first of all, blood introduced to the right atrium. It goes to the atrioventricular valve, tricuspid. Then it's gonna go to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it's gonna go for the semiluminal valve. The name is pulmonary semiluminal valve. That's this one. Then it's gonna go to the pulmonary trunk and pulmonary vein. From the pulmonary vein, the blood is gonna go to the lungs, right? It's gonna go to the lungs, and then it's gonna come back to the aortic. It's gonna come back to artery for the aortic semiluminal valve, and it's gonna go to the left atrium. It's gonna go to the left atrium. So the oxygenate blood now is going to be oxygenate blood, which is going to introduce to the left atrium. From the left atrium is going to go to the bicuspid, to the left ventricle, and from the left ventricle, oxygenate blood is going to leave through the aorta. It's going to leave through the aorta, and it's going to bypass aortic semiluminal valve. All right. So and we have those different valves to prevent the blood flow. So when the blood is received to the right atriums, so you always have to remember, so atriums the left, so the right and left atrium works at the same time, the contractions, and the ventricles works also at the same time. So when the atriums contract, right, those valves are opened. And but the semiluminal valves are closed. So once semiluminal valves are closed to prevent the blood flow. So when the right atrium are contract, the blood is gonna go to the from the atriums. The blood is gonna go from the right and left atriums. The blood is gonna go to the ventricles. So right now the cardiac muscles in the ventricles is relaxed, and when the blood right now on the ventricles, the atrioventricular valves are gonna get closed. So when they're gonna get closed, so they're gonna prevent the blood flow back to the atriums. So now those ventricles, the right ventricle and left ventricle is gonna contract, and from the right ventricle, deoxygenated blood is gonna go to the pulmonary vein. The blood is gonna go to the pulmonary vein, and it's gonna go to the oxygen. But when oxygenated blood gonna come from the lungs, and it's gonna be in a left ventricle, and the left ventricle is going to contract, is going to go through the semiluminal vein or semiluminal valve, and it's going to go to the aorta, the biggest artery in the biggest vessel, the biggest vessels in our body. And it's from that point the blood is going to be distributed through the body. And when you have a pause, so you have systole and diastole. So the systole, when the atriums or ventricles are contract, and diastole, when those all of them are when the muscles basically relaxed. So at the diastole stage, everything is relaxed, and the blood can be received to the atriums and ventricles. So, and it's this continues over again. This is how the blood flow happens through the heart. So what I want to from in the terms of my quizzes, and what I want you to know from you guys. So I want you to know the structure. First of all, I want you to know the structure and names. So I want you to see the difference between different type of veins, different type of vessels, which is come to the heart. So we have four vessels. So the first one is a vena cava, is a superior vena cava, which is come from the upper body portion, and you have inferior vena cava, which is going to introduce blood to the right atrium from the bottom portion of your body. So this is one vessel I want you to remember, the first one. The second vessel, which I want you to remember, this is aorta. So aorta is going to receive oxygenated blood, from the left ventricle, right? So this is the second vessel I want you to know and differentiate. The third vessel I want you to know, this is a pulmonary artery, right? Let me see. So right here, this is a mistake in a name. This is not actually pulmonary vein. This is a pulmonary artery. This is supposed to be pulmonary artery. I'm sorry about the. I forgot to. Change this mistake. So this the actual name. The actual name of this is a pulmonary artery, but it carries deoxygenated blood, right? And then, so I want you to know, and the last vessels I want you to know is the pulmonary veins. So the pulmonary veins, they come from the lungs. They come from the right, so from the left lung and the right lung, right? So we have two lungs. We have two separate portion of lung, the right portion and the left. So you have a blood which is going to go to the left portion of your lungs and the right portion. So, but I just want you to know the name is where the blood leave, deoxygenated blood leave through the right ventricle to the pulmonary trunk, through the semiluminal valve, and it's gonna leave to the lungs, and then its blood is gonna get oxygenated. It means the red blood cells is gonna receive oxygen, and it's gonna come back to the heart for the pulmonary veins, the left and right pulmonary veins, and it's gonna end up in a left atrium. It's gonna end up in a left atrium, and it's gonna go through the bicuspid. This is a atrioventricular valve, and it's gonna end up in a left ventricle. From the left ventricle, the blood is gonna go. We cannot see in that picture, but the valves is gonna be right here. Those ones, semiluminal valves, aortic semiluminal valves, and the blood is gonna go to the aorta. So I want you to remember this. I want you to know the name of a chambers. This is a 4 chambers: left atrium, the right atrium, left ventricle, right ventricle. I want you to remember the name of different types of valves. This is atrioventricular valves between atrium and ventricles. Then semiluminal valves. This is between blood vessels and ventricles. The pulmonary valve and aortic valve, which is we cannot see this, but in that picture we can see this. This is a pulmonary semiluminal valve, and this is aortic semilunar valve. And also I want you to know the blood flow. So I want you to be able to guide me how the blood is travel. So the first of all, blood is gonna go through the vein and how it's traveled through the blood. I want you to know this. This is gonna be in a quiz, so please make sure you know this. So let me repeat this. So I made a separate slides where you can study those blood flow. This is called the blood flow. So first of all, the deoxygenated blood, right? Deoxygenated blood is gonna come from the inferior and superior vena cava, right? From your brain and from all your organs, is gonna go to the right atrium. From the right atrium, it's gonna go through the open tricuspid valve. When the tricuspid valve is gonna close, the right ventricle is gonna contract, and it's gonna push out the blood for the semiluminal valve, pulmonary semiluminal valve, and it's gonna go to the pulmonary trunk. From the pulmonary trunk is gonna go to the pulmonary artery. This is still is a deoxygenated blood, but those vessels have a structure as an artery. Even though it carries out deoxygenated blood, it has structure. Those vessels have an artery-like structure. That's why we call them artery, even though they have deoxygenated blood. Then the blood is going to go to your lungs and it's going to oxygenate. Then oxygenated blood is going to go to the pulmonary vein, right? This is already pulmonary vein. Even now it has oxygenated blood, but those vessels has vein-like structure. Oxygenated blood is going to go to the left atrium. For the left atrium, it's going to go for the open bicuspid valve. So the left atrium is going to contract. The blood is going to go to the left ventricle for the open bicuspid. Then the left ventricle is going to contract, and it's going to go for the aortic semiluminal valve to the aorta. And from the aorta, it's going to go for the body, and the cycle is going to continue. All right. So I want you to know the blood flow. This is very essential to know the blood flow. This is what this cardiovascular system is, right? So you just guys have to be able go through those two slides for, when how the deoxygenated blood goes and oxygenated blood goes. So please try to understand this. Go to the YouTube videos and try to see the difference, um, uh, and try to memorize. You have to memorize with left ventricle, right ventricle, right atrium, left atrium, and the different types of blood vessels. So you have four blood vessels, which you have to know, four chambers, two ventricles, two atriums, and you have four valves, atrioventricular valves and semiluminal valves. So you have to remember this and their names. All right. So this is kind of a summary slide. So please go to this slide and see how the blood flow happened. So please remember, so this is going to be kind of summary slides. So thickness of a wall. So remember the artery wall is much bigger than the veins, and they can hold higher pressure than the vein, because when the blood flow, so when the blood is going to be pumped out from the heart, the pressure is going to be high. So the vessels, which is artery, is going to be able to maintain that pressure, right? So the wall made up from the smooth muscles is going to be able to maintain that pressure. Also, I have forgot to mention the left ventricle. The size of a wall is much thicker than the right one. The reason why, because this ventricle have to pump the blood from the whole your body, so it have to be much. So those muscles applying so much more force to move that blood. This is why those muscles are actually thicker and much stronger than from your right side. So remember this difference too. The muscles on the left ventricle are much stronger and much thicker than on the right side. So in our class, in our lab, we supposed to have dissection portion, and we supposed to have a heart from the sheep. So this is a sheep heart, and we will have a real sheep heart, and you will guys supposed to have to do dissection and see the internal structure of a heart. The reason why we have a sheep heart, because it represents the by the size and by the structure, the human heart is very similar. Actually, I wouldn't be able to recognize the difference between the sheep heart and human heart. That's how the structures is extremely similar. They have exactly the same structure, exactly the same walls, same valves, same ventricles, and the structure just looks exactly the same. I'm gonna send you the links for sheep heart dissection. Please go to those links, watch the videos, and also Google how the dissection of a heart. And please be remember for the quiz. For the quiz, you should know the 4 types of vessels comes in, comes out of the heart. 4 different chambers and type of blood, type of muscles we have in the vessels. So in the vessels we have a smooth muscles. In a heart we have a cardiac muscle, and also we have a skeletal muscle. So know the difference between in which one we have. All right, and this I'm gonna stop my lecture.